Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Right Stuff, a co-production of Pac 14 Television and the Writer's Block of the Eastern Shore. I'm Andy Nunez. My co-host is Dr. Gianni Hayes. Today, it's my pleasure that we have with us in the studio Mrs. Joyce Dennis. Joyce, glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Joyce and I have known each other a few years. We're both members of the Writer's Block of the Eastern Shore, and Joyce has published one novel prior to her most recent book, but we're here today to talk a lot about her new book. Joyce, what's the name of your new book?
The new book is a children's book, a story book called We're All Special.
And you've just come out with it.
Yes, it was released in August, so it's very new.
And I've seen pictures of it, and folks, it's a great book. It's a great book for kids. Tell us a little bit about the story. What's the theme behind We're All Special?
Well, it's a very nice little story involving a group of forest animals, and the object of the story is to help children with situations around bullying, and which is very prevalent in our schools a lot. Teachers say they see a lot of problems with it, and so the story I wrote probably back in 1978 for my daughter when she was young. And I just kind of revised it and brought it back out because I have young grandchildren now. And I do mentoring in elementary schools, so I see the need for little stories like this to help kids with socializing, especially when they start kindergarten and first grade.
Okay, great. We'll talk a little bit more about the book in a second, but let's talk a little bit about Joyce's background. Now, Joyce, you mentioned that you mentored for elementary school students, but you're no stranger to writing. You've done other writing projects before, and I know you worked for the Wave in Delaware for a while. Tell us a little bit about how you became interested in writing.
I've always loved to write short stories. When I was younger, probably about the time I was about first grade, 7 or 8 years old, I did some little plays and things with friends, and through the years just kept up with it and wrote a lot of poetry and just dabbled with my writing. But then when I really picked it up was when I worked at the Wave, and started with the Delmarva News and in the 80s, and did a lot of writing with my newspaper work. And it was a big thrill to get published some articles, town council meetings and social events and things like that. Little ladies' 91st birthdays and 100 birthdays. But it was just, it always kept my interest piqued. So in about 2003, after I joined the Writer's Block, I had a dream one night about this story that came to me, and over the period of about 3 years developed a novel. And I just can't remember a time when I haven't written short stories or poetry or something.
Right. Now, you're Eastern Shore native, of course. You're from the Berlin area, if I remember correctly.
Grew up in Berlin and then moved to Ocean City. So Berlin and Ocean City is really my hometowns.
And in the upcoming Writer's Block anthology that's coming out shortly sometime, you're going to have a story about an incident off of Ocean City.
Yes, the sinking of the African Queen, which happened 1958, 1959, around the Christmas time. And I was 9 years old at the time, so I do remember a lot about it. But I had to do a lot of research, too, on this story. But it was just fascinating to go back and kind of delve into the incidences that happened and all the people of Ocean City, how excited they were to do some of the salvaging on this ship. And it was just a fascinating story. I loved doing it.
Well, I remember you talked to me about this, and one particular relic of that wreck was a couch, wasn't it?
Yes. My mother hated this couch, but my father was one of the ones that had gone out to the ship after it was abandoned by the insurance company. And a lot of the Ocean City people went out in boats, and just hundreds of people were on her as she was drifting and had broken up. And this one particular couch was in the captain's quarters. And it was kind of a royal blue with like a gold stripe, and it was just the ugliest thing. But it also had, it was built for the decks of the ship, so the legs were shorter in the back. So it didn't sit right. So we had to, of course, cut the legs off. But my mother, as soon as she could, she had it reupholstered because it didn't match any of her furnishings. But But we had that sofa for a long time. It just was a special little.
Right. So you have a real personal tie to that story.
Yes.
And we're all going to look forward to it when it comes out in the anthology. Whenever that is, folks, be on the lookout. It's coming out soon, I promise you. But Joyce, your first big hit was your novel, To Right All Wrongs, that you wrote back in '07.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about, like you said, of course, earlier that the germ of the idea came to you in a dream.
Yes.
Tell us about what To Right All Wrongs is about and why it's touched so many people as it has.
It really has touched a lot of people. Every event that I go to, every venue with my books, I hear people say, "Oh, I have your novel, and I can't wait for the sequel," because I am working on a sequel to it. But this To Right All Wrongs was kind of a inspired story that came out of this dream, and I had no idea why I dreamed this particular young woman. But it follows the story of a young woman who comes from Ireland in 1919, and the story spans about 30 years of her life. And she emigrates to America through Ellis Island, which I've always been fascinated with how the immigrants came to this country through Ellis Island. So I did a lot of research on New York City and on Ireland itself. I have Irish on both sides of my family, so it kind of was a story that touched my heart. But this young woman raises 7 children during the years of the Great Depression and all the crime and corruption that's in the city at the time. So it, like I say, it spans from 1919 to about the 50s. And the characters are very unique, I think, and everyone that's read it loves the family and wanting to find out what happens to the next generation. So I think that's why.
So you got your work cut out for you.
Yes. I am working on it. It's just I wanted to get this children's book out first.
Right, because it has a special place in your heart.
Because I wrote it for my daughter and now my grandkids. And
so, okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about the story itself. Now, it's about bullying, and
yes.
It's got forest animals, and it's illustrated. This is a fully illustrated book.
Yes, it has beautiful watercolor illustrations that was completed by a lady named Peg Roten from Cambridge area. A lot of people will recognize her name from she carves ducks and waterfowl and paints them, so she's a very talented artist. But the story revolves around a little intruder to the forest, Lively Creek Forest, and it's a little skunk that determines that he tells everyone he is just special, and he is trying to take over their forest to become their leader. So the adventure unfolds as he accosts all the different animals and tells them he's going to take over the forest, and what the animals have to do to kind of save their homes from this little skunk, little intruder.
with his own weapon of mass destruction.
Yes, with his own weapon of mass destruction.
But
the characters are very colorful, and as the story unfolds, it tells you that every one of us is unique in our own way, and so are these particular animals. We have Wendell Owl, Judge Wendell Owl, and we have Eben Crow, Carlton Fox. He's an older fox, and he's very, very grumpy. So I think the characters will strike a chord with kids.
But I think one thing I like about your book is that not only do they find a solution, they find a very creative and nonviolent solution to their problem.
Yes, and that's the lesson to children, that you don't always have to have you can make an adversary your friend, and how they work this story out so that they all become friends.
Now you're working on the sequel to Right All Wrongs, but do you think you will write any more children's books?
I have several in mind. I've got probably about 5 or 6 stories that I've written over the years and just kind of squirreled away. So I might come back with another children's book. Yeah.
Now, this particular book was self-published.
Yes.
Now, tell us a little bit about what you went through from choosing a publisher to the process of getting it to print to where it's at now, and what's been the good things and the bad things about doing it yourself, as opposed to your previous book, which had a publisher.
Well, it's a lot of work, but it's also you get a lot of the decision-making process too. You just have to do your own research. You have to investigate all the different companies that are out there, see, kind of weigh what your situation is as far as what you want, what type of book you want, and just do your homework. It takes, don't think that you're going to get into it and just overnight rush right into it, because it is a long kind of process.
Okay.
But it's worth it to have the finished product in your hands that you really love. And I'm very proud of this book.
You're going to say you like the finished product.
Yes, I love it.
Now, your publisher was, or the printer was Book Surge Publishing.
Book Surge.
And they're, of course, Cambridge Books that publish a lot of my books use Book Surge also, and I've been happy with their product. But I've seen, of course, your book, and it's beautiful. You can get it in soft cover and hardcover.
Hardback, yes, as well.
And so, did Book Surge? What did they do as far as offering you? What kind of resources did they offer you along the process?
Well, they have several packages that they will offer you, and as well as most of these companies do. It just depends on your resources and, like I said, how you want your final book to look. With Book Surge, you do need to do a lot of work on the computer. I mean, you go back and forth online with them, so they have a whole process, and it's very precise, and it's easy to follow, but it is a lot of computer time.
Okay. Now, you turn in the manuscript to them in what form? What did it look like?
You can send it either way. You can send it electronically, or you can mail them a hard copy. But I did almost everything electronically, so it was just easier and quicker that way.
Okay. Now, did you have to format every page yourself, being it's an illustrated book?
You do quite a bit of the formatting. They do the final formatting as far as how it's going to look, but you set it up as far as what text you want on what page, where you want your illustrations to appear in the book, and that type of thing. So you do quite a bit of the formatting.
Okay.
So you need to be computer savvy in order to do it this way.
And
whereas with my novel, that was done through Phoenix and Phoenix, and which is a division of Book Pros, and I just sent them the hard copy, and they did all the work. So that was easier, but it was a longer process and much more costly.
Right, because while they weren't a vanity publisher,
No.
you still ended up putting out a lot of your own money to get the book.
Yes, and that's what people need to know ahead of time, is what your resources are and what you're willing to invest, and do your homework. Check the different companies and what their packages are.
Now, how many publishers did you go through to right all wrongs that I'm talking about now? How many publishers did you go to before you ended up with the
I probably investigated 6 or 7 different companies, and kind of corresponded back and forth with them to see before I made my final decision.
Okay.
And I just several phone conversations, and they were just so friendly and easy to deal with, and just like I say, they handled everything with that book. So.
Okay, and it's been a
huge. I've gotten 5-star reviews, and people just, like I say, everywhere I go now, that I'm running across a lot of people who have purchased the first novel, so they are desperately waiting for that second.
Oh yeah, and I've been to several shows with you where I've heard them say the same thing.
To the point where I've got to get back down at the computer and get my mind set on this. I've completed about 10 chapters on it, but I need to do a lot more research, and that's what I like to do with my books. Is I like to research, because as with Right on the Wrongs, like I said, I did a lot of research on New York City, because other than having visited it, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the locations, and I wanted my locations for this book to be so accurate that anyone picking up the book from New York City would say, well, I know right where that's at. I'm familiar with that area. And so I had a friend that lived in New York, had a brother who lived in New York City, and corresponded with him through email for months, giving me exact street names, keeping it relevant to that time period.
Right.
And the detective, because it does start out with a murder, the detective had to find one who was a retired policeman from the New York area that had experience with homicide. And that took months and months of trying to find this right individual. And come to find out, I was in an auction one day, and my husband had been talking to this gentleman and found out that he was from New York, and he was a retired detective, a homicide detective. And didn't get his name, and then just happened to run across him again about a month later, and come to find out he lives 5 minutes from me. So he lives right in Dagsboro. So.
Okay, so you've written a book about New York City and about Irish immigrants.
Irish immigrants.
So you had to know a lot about Irish people
Yes.
and Irish customs,
Yes.
Irish speech patterns, as well as New York of the early 20s.
Yes.
On in. So what's the feedback you've had from New Yorkers and from Irishmen? Irish women, I guess, mostly would read the
I've
book.
had a lot of Irish descendants who have said they've read the book and said, that sounds just like my aunt. She came from Ireland, and the main character, Lorraine, in the book is my aunt. It's like you know her a lot, you knew her life. So I've got a lot of positive feedback from that. So evidently I hit it pretty well with the Irish.
No, that's good. So what I'm getting at for the listeners out there is that you've got to do your homework.
Yes.
When you're writing a book.
Yes, exactly.
And not only do you have to do your homework, you have to understand that once this book's out of your hands in print, people are going to come up to you and tell you whether
good or bad, whether they like it or what they didn't find that rang true, or you get a lot of response from people especially when you're out at these venues, that'll come up to you, as you have with your books. And they'll say, well, I have that book and I loved it, or I bought that for my husband and he loves it. And so it's really heartwarming to hear people. So far I haven't gotten a lot of bad compliment or bad remarks.
I haven't heard of
so I'm very pleased with that.
Okay, well, the few minutes we got left, let's talk a little bit about where you're going to go from here, and you're going to work on the sequel.
Yes.
To Right All Wrongs, and have you got a title for it?
At this point, it's a working title, but Honor Bound is what I have settled on for now.
And I understand there's going to be some scenes out west.
Yes. One of the integral characters in To Right All Wrongs is a Native American who runs a boxing gym, and his name is Lester Moon. He's half Shoshone, so he has very quirky kind of character, and everyone seems to enjoy him. So, and he's the one that I had envisioned to be a central character in the sequel. So it will also follow along with the family, the second generation of the O'Brien family, but it will also take Lester Moon back to his origins, which is back out west to Wyoming. So I'm at that point where I've got to do a lot of research on Wyoming.
Joyce, tell me one thing now. You've written a novel, an adult novel, a murder mystery, and now you've written this children's book. Now these are books at two different levels, you've gone from a violent murder story, family saga, to a non-violent solution.
Totally different genres.
Right. Tell me, how was it difficult switching gears like that?
Not really, because as I said, the children's story I had written many years ago. So other than revising it a little bit and doing a little bit of second editing, I didn't have to do a lot to bring it up to speed. But it is a kind of switch of gears, because with the adult novel, you need to keep in mind the plot levels and the time frame. Time frame was a big hurdle for me, because you have with so many different characters, which you don't normally have in a children's book. You have to kind of interweave those characters and their histories and their ages and all that. So it's a lot of blocking out of the story that you don't have in a children's book. In children's book, you just want to aim that at the kids and give them a meaningful lesson that's going to ring true to them, and it's going to inspire them to read it, and it's going to help the parents to see that this is a great book for kids to pick up and to read to them and that they'll enjoy.
As far as getting a hold of your books, To Right All Wrongs, you can find that in just
many bookstores
many independent
around.
bookstores around. And your new book, We're All Special, I just saw a copy of it at Maggie's in Snow Hill yesterday, so I know it's getting the rounds.
Yes.
Same deal, though. You can get it at a lot of the independent
A lot
stores.
of the independent bookstores, Berlin area, Snow Hill, as well as here in Salisbury.
Okay. And for the armchair book buyers, both books are available at Amazon.
On Amazon,
So all you got to do is run up, if you don't feel like getting in the car and going to a bookstore, Amazon.com, you can get both of Joyce's books there. Let me just go over it real quickly, folks, because we're just about out of time. To Right All Wrongs, Joyce's first novel about a murder and an Irish immigrant family. Excellent reviews.
has a romantic backdrop, so it's a murder mystery and a romance.
Right, makes Christmas is coming. But you can find it on Amazon or most independent bookstores. Her newest book, children's book, We're All Special, beautifully illustrated by Peg Roten. She's a wonderful lady. I met her the other week. Really good, talented artist.
Very talented artist.
Pick it up local bookstores. Get it off Amazon. Joyce, in closing, let me tell you, they're both great books.
Thank you.
I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you
When
very much.
Honor Bound comes out, I'm hoping you'll come back on the show.
I'd be
We'll talk
delighted
some
to.
more. And is there anything that you'd like to tell struggling writers or the young folks coming along? Is there any advice that you'd want to impart to them in the last couple of minutes?
I have a little handout that I give out to a lot of the venues because I have a lot of teen writers that come up and with the mothers with their daughters and say, my daughter loves to write. So I have a little handout that I give them with some tips about knowing your subject, being very comfortable with your subject, research again, do a lot of your homework, spend time, allot your time, at least sometime during the day. Specifically, whatever time that you're comfortable and you want to sit and spend time at the computer, just do your research and just love to write.
Joyce, now you've been a member of the Writer's Bloc now since 2000 and
About 7 years.
about 7 years. And tell me, what have you felt was the greatest advantage being a member of the Bloc?
It's just been a wonderful experience for me to be able to network with a group of people like-minded who love to write and are interested in anything to do with the aspects of writing and getting published. I don't really think I probably would have been able to follow through with everything I needed to do to get that first novel published without the inspiration of a lot of the people I've met at the Writer's Bloc. So I encourage anyone who loves to read or just to write, whether it's poetry or we do tolerate poets, or whether it's to do their memoirs or a family memoir, to get involved with the Writer's Bloc or another writing group. The same way with young people who like to write. It really is a great networking system to help you with your writing.
Right. Okay.
And if you just like to come out and like to critique people's work. So.
Yes, we do have people that like to do that. And don't forget, folks, it's the third Saturday every month, room number 3, the Central Library, downtown Salisbury. So look for the Writer's Bloc every month. Okay, there you go. All right, folks. Well, we're out of time on another great episode of The Right Stuff. I want to thank my guest today, Mrs. Joyce Dennis. Joyce, I know you'll come back and see us again.
Yes, I will.
Folks, we're going to have another great show coming up shortly. I know you want to tune in. Just remember, Right Stuff is made through the courtesy of Pack 14 TV. Pack 14 can always use your support. Go to the website, www.pack14.org. Click on the different things, see how you can help out, how you can have your own TV show here on Pack 14. How you can become a supporter, a volunteer, or even a guest on great shows like The Right Stuff. But for now, we've got to go. On behalf of my co-host, Dr. Gianni Hayes, this is Andy Nunez, and Joyce Dennis, my guest. Had a great time. We'll see you again real soon. Have a good day.
you like to see your community organization or nonprofit group featured on PAC 14? To get started, contact us at 410-677-5014 or visit our website at www.pac14.org. PAC 14 is a great way to connect with your community.